Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're thrilled to be here because this is our first webinar since the Juniper Networks acquisition of NetRounds. Hopefully, you've all heard by now that NetRounds has been rebranded and is called Paragon Active Assurance, a part of Juniper's Paragon automation portfolio. Today's webinar will be held by Juniper Networks' Cyril Desal, Product Marketing Director for Paragon WAN Automation, previously the VP of Marketing at NetRounds. He will be joined by analyst Mason's Anil Rao, Principal Analyst and Researcher. Today's agenda will start by identifying the need to improve customer experience and satisfaction in telecom, engineering and operation teams, the challenges that they have, and how automation can help them, how to leverage active assurance as part of the full service lifecycle, the service activation testing problem, and how you can easily solve it, key characteristics for automated active assurance, and moving into a tier 1 success story, followed by finally a Q&A session. Now, you will see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A box. Please feel free to write your questions in that box during the presentation. Some questions will be addressed verbally at the end by our speakers. Alternatively, you'll receive a direct reply in the chat box. Without further ado, Cyril, over to you.
Thank you, Natasha. My name is Cyril Dussault. I am a Director of Product Marketing at Juniper Networks. I'm quite happy to be co-presenting here with Anil today from Analysis Mason. I know Anil from many years and is truly an expert in service assurance and automation. I would also like to thank you everyone on this webcast and for participating to this webinar on zero-touch testing. As we all know, communication service provider can differentiate with superior customer experience. This is then not surprising that in the telecom study from Ernst & Young that we see here, we can see that 78% of respondents claim that customer experience and satisfaction are top priorities. However, as we can see, one of the survey participants responded that currently our industry is plagued with churn levels that will terrify any other industries. So let's see how we can improve this. And so when talking about customer service experience, there are many aspects that we could focus on. For example, we could make sure that we have the right offer, that for the bidding processes are easy and automated. In this webinar, we're going to focus on explaining how a service provider can deliver the right service characteristics from day one, and how they can make sure that engineering teams can onboard customers quickly without impacting customer experience, all thanks to our zero-touch testing solution. So one of the issues that our industry has had for many years is that customers are first to find network problems. And a recent survey from Juniper Networks with 200 large companies in North America revealed that network problems are not reported or reported by end user, and only 39% of them are discovered by network operations. This means that more than 60% of network problems are discovered by customer or not reported at all. This is something that needs to change if we want to achieve our strategic objective of improving customer experience and satisfaction. So prior to describe the solution, Anil will now explain what are communication service provider challenges and how their process needs to evolve to assure customer experience.
Thank you, Cyril. That's a great introduction to why service providers must put customer experience at the heart of their business strategies, especially in the context of network service experience. So in my part of the presentation, I will argue that service providers need to think about a new operations model to address some of the challenges that Cyril explained in his initial remarks. And I believe network automation is foundational to this new operations model. So I'm going to try and explain this in a little bit more detail. So in the chart here, you see I've tried to sort of depict the traditional operations model, highly simplified, of course. So in this operations model, the organization design and the business processes were designed for traditional voice and data services as siloed and highly manual processes. So network engineering and field operations, build out the network, followed by the business and IT operations, creating the customer orders, and then IT and network operations provisioning the service orders, and finally, the operations and engineering teams managing the day-to-day network and service operations. The interdepartment collaboration has been critical to make this model work. But then this has been done largely in a manual manner. This is one of the key reasons why service providers face some of the issues that Cyril explained earlier. So the siloed processes with manual interdepartment handovers lead to an inward focus on operations, losing sight of the broader business goals, such as customer experience, superior customer experience, and so on. So in my part, I want to propose a new operation model for what we call as the end-to-end service lifecycle automation, which is fit for purpose for the 5G era. And more specifically, to achieve these broader goals, including reducing OpEx, increasing service agility, and as Cyril was saying, delivering superior customer experiences. Also, a new operations model will be necessary to support new business models, such as network as a service or network slices and so on, as well as managing the network complexity of the SDN and cloud-based 5G networks that we are starting to operationalize on an ongoing basis. Here is a simplified illustration of what the industry calls as the intent-driven network automation framework for service lifecycle automation. Now, one of the basic principles of this new operation model is that the business intent drives the rest of the operations. Now, the business intent could be an enterprise wanting a low latency network slice, or wanting to set up 100 sites with SD-WAN as an example. So this business intent drives the automation of the service design for that network slice. So at this point, the service characteristics of the network slice is encapsulated in the service design, which is then translated into service intent through the service orchestration process. The service orchestrator then orchestrates across one or more network orchestrators, which further encapsulates the sort of the functions for translating the service intent to network intent. So during this process, the network orchestrators instantiate and activate the networking resources associated with the service, as well as validating and monitoring the network and service, as well as performing analytics-driven automated actions. So these automated actions would then drive the self-healing process of the network and the service before they have an impact on customer experience. So at this point, we've sort of moved from the design time operations to the runtime operations, and then back into the handover back into the runtime operations with the monitoring of the customer experience. So in this mode, the service lifecycle within runtime operations is a fully automated, policy-driven, self-controlling loop with the necessary touch points with the design time operations, with the handover from the service orchestration to network orchestration on one hand, and the self-healing and the automation of the runtime operations back into the customer experience and back into the business intent. So that's that's the other way. Now, according to our latest numbers, there are now more than 100 5G networks launched in over 44 countries. So even as these networks are being launched, service providers are telling us that they are in the midst of a plethora of network automation initiatives. So in this survey of 55 service providers that we did, more than 51% said that network automation is a top 3 strategic priority. And then that number increases to 75% who said that it is a top 5 initiative. So when you add the top 2 categories. Now, when we probed further, service providers also stated that increasing service agility, leading to enhanced customer experience, and reducing OPEX were the key drivers for network automation. Now, achieving the goal of full network and service automation, like I explained in the chart a couple of slides ago. Now, achieving that sort of a full automation will be a multi-year journey, and it will require an incremental or a stepwise approach. So Analysis Mason believes that service providers will need 4 key, highly interworking OSS pillars to achieve this goal. So we need, on one hand, the service design and orchestration systems, which enable automated network planning, design, rollout, and service design functions supported by automated customer and service order orchestration, right? So this is mostly on the design time operation side of things. So these systems will translate the business intent into service intent, like I was explaining earlier, and design services by decomposing the customer request, which is the business intent, into network service requirements. Second, network orchestration systems will translate the service intent into network intent, managing and dictating the network resource life cycles within as well as across domains. As well as we're seeing with the introduction of edge clouds and central clouds and so on, the orchestration systems will have to work across these distributed edge clouds as well as central clouds to ensure that the services are activated when and where required and configured as needed. Third, a robust assurance platform or a solution is going to be essential to support automation at every layer and every domain of the network. So the assurance solution monitors the network and the service performance, as well as validating the services as they are activated. And the solution must integrate into higher level orchestrators to achieve the closed loop automation that I was highlighting earlier. And finally, fourth, the MLAI-based analytics will provide the key insights required to drive assurance and network and service automation as a whole. So embedding MLAI in all the layers of the operational stack will ensure that the execution of MLAI and the subsequent actions are applied close to the point of need. Next. So with that backdrop of the network and service lifecycle automation framework, let us double click on one particular aspect of automated assurance, which is the theme of today, active testing. Now, active testing has been traditionally used, among other things, for test and turn-up testing of services before handing over to the customer. So if you remember when I was explaining the current operations model, this is typically a manual handover between the IT and network operations department, who are responsible for service provisioning, the handover to the operations department, who then conduct the service validation before handing it back to the customer-facing departments for ultimately handover to the customer. Now, if we take that and then apply the new operations model, This process can be fully integrated into the network orchestration process as described here in the chart. So at the end of the provisioning process, the network orchestrator can automatically invoke the active testing routines to perform the process of test and turn-up validation. And the results of the test can be automatically communicated back to the orchestrator, which can then further take actions such as communicating with higher layer OSS, such as service orchestration, and hand over the service to the customer. So in addition to the test and turn up use case, active testing automation can also be applied, as I was saying, to a plethora of other use cases, and some of which are explained here. First, the validation of network changes before release to the customers. So this is an extension to the test and turn up testing, and provide further benefits by sort of significantly reducing the change management cycle time, which can take days or weeks. Let me run through the other use cases. Validating that the network supports business objectives. Now, this could be relevant to a wide variety of scenarios as well. So, but as an example, it could be for proactively monitoring quality of service of a mobile backhaul network, or the end-to-end voice and data service quality to deliver on the contracted SLAs. Faster fault isolation. So this is about using automated active testing to test individual network segments to isolate the cause of performance degradation. Validation of cross CSP services. So we're seeing demand for these type of services. So this is about testing the services that span multiple CSP networks and multiple clouds as well. Now, validation of hybrid services. It's in the title. It's about services that span both physical and virtual networks. And finally, validation of VNFs and CNFs and services that span the virtual network. So as an example, this could be about validating and certifying VNFs and CNFs, the cloud native network functions, and the services as they are instantiated and activated. With those remarks, let me hand you back to Cyril. Cyril, over to you.
Thank you, Anil. So as Anil mentioned, today we really want to focus on service activation testing. And some of you actually might not know what every engineer needs to do when they onboard a customer. So I just wanted to provide an example of a typical activation testing. So when prior to onboard a customer, you might need to basically double check that the security gateway are well configured. You might need to double check the QoS profiling on the end-to-end service delivery chain. You might want as well to double check that a specific service like a VoIP service can run properly from end-to-end. If you're offering a managed service, you might want to make sure so that you have a reachability to the managed service from your customer location. And if you're using partners, you might want to make sure that your partners are delivering upon their SLA. And if one of those tests is not working, like for example, if you're doing a load testing, then you can't onboard the customer. You have to make sure that everything is properly configured prior to onboard your customer. And in fact, while we have to do all those tests, in reality, services are not tested thoroughly. And I think Anil mentioned it a bit as well. And the reason is that we used to use a lot of handled test device. They might be difficult to test. And so at the end of the day, to test those services, at the end of the day, most of the team, they're also pressured by the business. So they do nothing. They might do a simple ping. And if they have a high value customer, then they might send some engineers on site to make sure that things will work for that high value customer. Yet that is quite expensive. So at the end of the day, if they are not testing thoroughly their services, they have failed deliveries. which leads to bad reputation, churn, and on top of these, very expensive repairs. Because when it doesn't work, it's really tricky to understand why it doesn't work. So the solution that we're proposing today and that we are talking about is using active testing, which are synthetic transactions that we can run on the data plane. And by running those synthetic transactions on the data plane, the way to do it is we are leveraging some software-only virtual test agents that can be deployed in the network. And from those agents, you will run those synthetic transactions end-to-end or between the different network segments that support your service. And that is really the only way to properly understand service quality as an end user. If you don't want or cannot deploy agents everywhere, then you can use reflector technology in your network to do some testing from the agent to a reflector. So there are different capabilities and possibilities depending on your service and depending on your network architecture. But by doing this, you are really going to understand your end-to-end performance or end-to-end service performance for the characteristic that you sold to your customer. For example, you will understand if your SD-WAN service works end-to-end, and if it doesn't, which is the underlay network that might be damaging that performance. You will be able to make sure that the QoS is configured in all the different network segments that are supporting that service. If there's a firewall that is misconfigured, yes, as well, you will be able to spot that basically your customer is not going to be able to reach that critical application when the service is trying to go through that firewall. And so there are a number of key success factors that are required in order for you to succeed with those projects. One of them is to have one platform that offers all the tests that you need from layer 2 to layer 7. So if you're offering a layer 2 or layer 3 VPN service, if you're offering an SD-WAN service, or if you're offering a VoIP service or a managed Office 365 or any other managed application, you want to make sure that that platform that you have give you the ability to test all those applications. And then when you deploy those software-only agents in your network that, by the way, can be automatically deployed, basically you have all what it takes to monitor your service. And one other critical success factor is that you have the ability to build through test template to compose the tests that you need that depends on your service and that depends on your customer. So for each of your services, there's a number of tests that you want to be done. And there's a number of thresholds that you want to set that will be based on your basic, I would say, service definition, or it could be tailored to each of your customer. If you've sold a specific tailored service to a customer, you also want to be able to test the characteristic of that specific tailored service. And so you need that solution that gives you the ability to compose, to select all the tests that you need, chain them, and run them once. But if you have different type of services, like a VoIP service, on top of testing the connectivity, you might want to run 5 VoIP calls in order to make sure that the VoIP service is running. You might want also to try to reach your Office 365 service from the customer location to make sure that the employees that are going to use that service are going to be able to get good performance about all those applications that are hosted in the cloud and somewhere else. And so I'm going to hand over back to Anil, who has some more critical success factor to share with you. And so, Anil, it's back to you.
Thanks, Cyril. So when you sort of contextualize what Cyril was saying just now and my initial remarks around the whole network automation and the role of active testing automation. So we need to now think about the underlying technology that underpins the active testing solution, right? So Cyril alluded to it in one of his slides where he was talking about virtual test agents. or software-only test agents, right? So that's interesting, because what I'm going to talk about is something on those lines here. So one of the additional requirement is that the solution should not only support existing physical networks, which is most of what we have today, but should also be future-proof to support the new software-defined networks and virtual networks of the future. So when we analyze from these standpoints, we will realize that the existing active testing technology, which are predominantly appliance-based, may not be most suited for these new requirements. So I'm proposing here that the active testing technology must evolve to support new deployment options, which I've sort of highlighted here in the right side chart. To start with the commercial hardware-based deployment model. So this provides the flexibility for service providers to deploy it on their own preferred hardware, and they can procure the active testing solution as a software-only license. So it gives them better flexibility. VNFs, so this is the next, I suppose, both as an evolution as well as an additional deployment model, is the option in which the active test components are deployed as virtual functions, and by nature, the virtual functions enable a much higher dynamicity and programmability. So we're getting more and more flexibility in the testing solution itself. And finally, containerized deployment model is in which the active testing components are deployed as microservices. And again, by nature, microservices enable a much granular control to scale and upgrade only those components that require it. So you don't have to apply the same actions for the entire test platform. So you could pick and choose the components that you want modified and so on. So the idea here is to have a portfolio of deployment options. So service providers can make choices as they deem fit for their purpose and depending on where they are in their evolution journey in terms of automation and so on. So in summary, I just wanted to highlight that as you move along this evolution for the test solution, there's going to be a higher level of control and ability to do much better automation because of that granular control and the dynamicity that the components provide. So it just sort of is a fit for purpose to the broader automation goal that the operators want to achieve. But at the same time, supporting a broad variety of deployment models, including physical, because many networks are still physical, and giving operators choice to make the evolution based on their timelines is going to be critical as a success factor. So to bring us back to the automation framework I discussed earlier, the test automation solution would look something like this that we've depicted here in the chart. So notice that the test orchestrator as a new component that we have introduced here in this architecture, the test orchestrator will manage the full portfolio of test components that just highlighted in the previous slide. So the idea is to abstract the test infrastructure from the higher layer OSS systems, and in the process provide a clean API based interface for easy integration and ultimately better automation. So the network orchestrator would consume this API to interact with the test orchestrator for automating the test and validation processes that Cyril presented in detail and some of the use cases I highlighted in my part earlier. So at this stage, Cyril, I will hand you back for your final section and your remarks.
Thank you, Anil. And so I'm going to start by just summarizing what we've said. When we want to deploy zero-touch testing, that's something, by the way, that can be done quite easily. But there are some key success factors. The first one is you really need a platform with deep networking capability, layer 2 to layer 7 traffic generation, the ability to have flexible test template. You need the ability to have a solution that can be deployed quite easily. So we didn't talk too much about a SaaS model or an on-prem model, but if you have the choice that gives you the ability to either go full on a SaaS, deploy that solution in SaaS, or if you prefer to do it on-prem, you can do it, or you can start with SaaS and then migrate your deployment to an on-prem. But what is critical is that what Anil just mentioned, that ability to have options for the deployment of the agents with software version, VNF version, and containerized versions. And then that platform has to be built for automation with REST APIs, net-confined YAML models. And that is actually what we have with Paragon Active Assurance. And with Paragon Active Assurance, we can automate activation testing, provide real quality monitoring to operation, and as well give the ability to do very fast troubleshooting and even remote troubleshooting when needs be. And so I'm going to now talk about a success story. So one of our tier 1 customer, as we mentioned, he has a traditional layer 2, layer 3 SD1 business service, and they're operating globally. And as such, they have a lot of partners network where they're buying connectivity to offer their own services. And so they've used those software agents, they've deployed them in some telco clouds, so in 4 telco clouds all around the world, to do all the testing from the telco cloud. So the testing could be done at the edge, but in their case, they choose to do it centrally. And by doing this, they were really able to really understand prior to onboard their customers, they were able to understand, are we going to meet our service level? Can we onboard the customer? And when that was not possible, or when they identified that there was issues, the SLAs are not yet met, basically they're able to really troubleshoot very quickly issues on the end-to-end service delivery chain. And often, and unfortunately, but often, some of the problems came from partner network. So they're able to locate the issue in the partner network. And as well, they're able to show the partner network their reports explaining why they believe that the problem is in their network, and give the ability for the partner network, therefore, to resolve the problem quickly. And so at the end of the day, prior to use the solution, it took them when they had an issue, it usually took them 5 days to locate that issue. And 5 days, so it's 5 days where you can't bill your customer, and people are waiting, everyone is frustrating, your account manager within the organization is pinging you, trying to understand when can we onboard that customer. And with the solution, now it takes them 2 hours to locate that issues. And if that issue is located in a partner network, they have the reports that they need to communicate with the partner and accelerate fixing those problems. And which means that they are now able to really onboard customer much faster, therefore also bill customer much faster. They've been able to reduce their service delivery failure rate significantly. And they're also able to reduce their OPEX. But what they explained to us is it's really the benefits for them is that there was a lot of people doing some manual tasks that are not really useful. And now those people, we save a lot of time for those teams that can refocus on more critical issues. They can actually optimize further the quality of the network and services because now they have the time, and all those tasks that they had to do to identify the problem and to fix those problems, they don't have to do this any longer. So it's a great win-win for everyone within that organization. Now, Active Assurance is part of the Paragon portfolio. And Paragon is a model of excellence, which is what our customer can achieve with this portfolio of solutions on one automation. And as we discussed today, automations pave the way for an assured service experience. I will not have the time to highlight all of the products that are part of the Paragon solution portfolio. And if you are interested, we will be able to do up some follow-up webcasts, but you can find a lot of information on our website anyway. So with Paragon, you can plan, model, and forecast your service. You can orchestrate service activation. You can automate service assurance, as we've really have seen today. You can leverage machine learning to gain actionable insight on your service and networks. And last but not least, you can optimize your service infrastructure through closed-loop automation. So that is the end of the webcast part of that webinar. And I would like to thank you all for being here with us and for your attention. I really hope that session was informative, and we're going to now start our Q&A.
Thank you from my side as well. Thanks, Cyril. Always a pleasure to co-present with you, and back to the audience for some engagement and some interesting questions, I hope.
So we actually have a few questions coming here, and the first one I think is going to be for you, Anil. It's how critical is it to measure end user quality?
Oh, thanks, Cyril. Well, I think you can't really fix something that you haven't measured, right? So right off the bat, I would say that measuring end user quality is absolutely critical, if not for anything, purely because from a customer's perspective, that's what they're paying the operators, the service providers for. So it's the service level agreements, it's the quality of service, it's latency, all the rest of it, in the context of service quality. So, without knowing how bad or how good the service quality is, you can't really take action to fix it. So from that perspective alone, it's absolutely critical to measure end user quality. And secondly, if you are in a position to measure end user quality and you have the necessary insights and the data on the existing end user quality that the operators are delivering to the customers, then you are in a much better position to drive the whole closed loop automation processes that we explained during the webcast. So you measure the end user quality so you can take some action to fix it and improve the service performance and the service quality, but then you also use the insights to sort of drive some of the MLAI-based closed loop automation processes. Okay. So thanks, Cyril. I see another question just popped up here. Maybe I think you're in a good position because you talk to customers all the time. So one of the audience wants to know, do you believe that open APIs are now mature enough to automatically turn on service quality measurement for each service or location?
That's a good question, and definitively. So with solution like Paragon Active Assurance, a containerized software agent can be automatically deployed in the network. So tests can be automatically turned up and executed prior to onboard customers. Also, true service level monitoring can automatically be tailored to the service characteristic purchased by customer, as we discussed during that webinar. And so this is all due to the maturity of a solution like Paragon Active Assurance that can be driven from REST APIs. And we have now many implementation with various CSPs and some quite interesting one. But the thing is, service assurance has been overlooked in the past due to the complexity associated with deploying and configuring solutions. And here, what we are bringing with Paragon Active Assurance is a solution that is actually extremely easy to automate, to make sure your services will be assured properly from day one. So definitively, we are really mature, and basically that's something that I think every service provider should do. So I'm looking at other questions, but actually I think we're running a bit short of time. So what we'll do with Anil, we'll stay on the webcast, and we will respond to the question on the text box. And so for the other question, there's a number of them. We'll send back the answers to everyone who's participated to that webinar. So don't hesitate to leave your questions, and we'll come back to you. And so thanks everyone for attending that webinar. It was a pleasure to be here with you today. And we hope to hear from you and to interact in the future on that very interesting topic. And thanks a lot, Anil, for being here with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Cyril. Always a pleasure to co-present with you. Indeed, automation is a great topic, and we research this topic with Analysis Mason in a lot of depth, and hopefully we'll have more interesting conversations in the future as well. Thank you.